Hey guys, Dr. Foxen here, and before I start the video, I just want to give a quick update. So, the reason I've been kind of gone for a little while is because my stepmom is dealing with this whole immigration thing, and for the past 7 years it's been nuts, so it's coming to a head pretty soon to determine whether or not she can stay in the U.S. If it goes well, she'll stay. If it doesn't, she has to leave 10 years before she can do the immigration test again. So I was stressed out of my mind and took a break. Anyway, I'm not going to start on a big project because it's just going to bring too much stress and it's going to put so much on my shoulders. So I'm just going to start with a random thing I think would be just pretty cool and funny. So I'm going to make 2 different fanfics tonight. Anyway, without further ado, and no more stalling, let's get right into the fic. This is Arthur in Equestria, Chapter 1. Arthur's eyes blinked open a little bit, then a little bit more. He unconsciously moved his hand to his face and rubbed the grime out of his face. He could feel a little bit of dirt, and he could feel a few other things. He got up, he rubbed it off, and he looked at his gloved hands. What greeted him was something that was less than nice. There was a few worms, some dirt, and some grass. He looked on his body and there was some bugs, a spider, and some more dirt. He got up and began rubbing off all the dirt that was on him. He took his hands and put it on the legs of his pants and wiped them off. He looked around him and noticed he was out in the middle of nowhere. His memory was vague. Didn't really have a decent idea on what happened. Didn't know if he drank himself to death or if he was just knocked out and tossed out here. He checked and, well, that couldn't be it. Still had all his weapons on him. He looked to his right and he saw his horse. He couldn't have passed out here. No way. He didn't even set up camp. He was lost. He had no clue as to how or why he's out here. The area seemed unfamiliar to him. However, he did at least recognize the terrain a little bit. Sure, he didn't recognize any landmarks, but what he did know is he was probably in a somewhat familiar area, suggesting the trees and the grass. There was a few dirt patches here and there, a few elevated areas in the terrain that were made of rock, a few rocky hills here and there. He put both of his hands on both sides of his hips and looked around. He honestly didn't know. He decided it was best to get a lay of the land, look around. Well, I'll be damned. This is a new place, all right. He whistled to his horse, and his horse trotted over. He moved over, grabbed his saddle, and yanked himself up on top. And pretty soon the horse was riding away. Didn't know where he was going. He was just hoping he'd find a train track or something. Get up high, get a look at the land, use his binoculars. While the horse was riding, he looked down for a few seconds. He was wearing a blue button-up, long sleeve. And over that he had an overcoat. It was tannish brown, but it was more brown than tan. It was a little old, but it worked. He had a brown bandana around his neck, and he moved his eyes a little up top, and he was wearing his black hat. He looked a little down. He still had his satchel. He had his brown belt buckle with a few bullets here and there, with a gold belt buckle. He was also wearing a pair of brownish rancher jeans, along with a holster, and at the bottom was his cowboy boots. As he was riding, he really didn't pay it no mind. He didn't care none. Arthur was a good man. He had a really good reputation. He was sure if he found somebody, they were bound to know him. After a little while of riding in the same direction on his horse, he said, "Good girl. That's a good girl, all right." He reached into his pocket and grabbed an apple, moved it over, and his horse began gnawing it down. He reached back into his pack, grabbed a brush, began brushing the horse's coat, getting some dirt loose and having it fall out. "That's it. Good girl. Good girl." The horse, after a little bit, began walking. He didn't really mind. At least he could get a look around. He looked out there at the land, and smiled. At least he was out in nature. Arthur could always appreciate that. But the one thing he appreciated more than anything, the one thing that he ran with, was loyalty. But regardless of everything, they kept on going. As they kept on moving, Arthur thought to himself, he was a thief. Sure, he was an outlaw. Sure, but in the end he remained a good man. Regardless of everything that's happened, he stuck to his guns and saw it all through. For some reason, he thought he died. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He shook his head and kept going. After what felt like a little bit, he made his way onto a hill. From there, he pulled out some binoculars and looked on out. He grit his teeth. "God damn it, there ain't nothing out here." And by that, it was completely honest. There was nothing. For miles, well, he could only see maybe 10 miles at most of those binoculars. But most of the surrounding area was surrounded by hills or a few mountains. But it was practically nothing. That was until, in a nearby forest, he saw a homestead. He smiled to himself and thought, well, maybe it ain't all bad after all. His horse began moving on down there, and he smiled, thinking, well, hopefully these folks know who I am, or maybe I get some directions or a lay of the land. He went on down there, and when he got there, he saw something. He saw smaller horses. His horse, in all honesty, was pretty big. But when he saw these smaller horses, his eyes kind of rose a little bit. Then they rose further. One of them damn horses was flying around. Another one had a horn. And another one just looked like a horse. He just sat there, dumbfounded by the whole thing. It wasn't until one of them turned, saw him, screamed at the top of their lungs, and fainted. Well, shit, It's gonna be a good morning.